In our latest reading from the archives, we're looking into relationships. We have a range of love letters, poems, accounts of weddings, and even a clandestine marriage to bring you. We know from a note on the second page that this is a copy of a love letter sent by a gentleman's butler to the housekeeper. It is included in the papers of the Bulwer-Lytton family, who owned land in the village of Hayden near Reetham in Norfolk. The letter is in a collection of papers from the early to mid-1800s. The note attached to the letter reads, "This is a true copy of the letter sent by a gentleman's butler to the housekeeper upon his removal with his master to his country residence, communicated to me by E.B.E., who was acquainted with the gentleman." The letter itself reads,
My dear, I set myself down in the midst of the flood of tears to write these few lines to you, which I so fear will prove utterly my ruin in this world, and without the least doubt know the world to come, for I have not the pleasure to sleep 1 minute, or to walk, ride, or stand still, for I am not to be comforted by any person or persons in this present world, only by you. But, my dear, they cannot separate our hearts, though they have separated us one from the other. I hope there will never be a separation of our lives, but that will still continue. If we do not see one another, yet we may love one another, and pray for one another. And now my desire is that my pen may reach you, though my voice cannot reach you, my dear, that I may still continue and approve my sincerity of my love to you. I cannot mention on this little piece of paper 1/2 of my love to you, but, my dear, I hope you will consider and not be hard of persuasion. It is my broken and entangled heart's desire that you may live in heaven whilst on earth, and when you leave the earth, go to heaven and continue for ever and ever. So, my dear, I hope you will keep this entirely to thyself, and ponder on it by yourself, for I hope you will not let either friend or foe see it by no means whatsoever. As I lay sleeping on my bed, free from thought of care and dread, my heart did wander far away. Heartless am I this very day. Mark I will ascribe to you, such hearts you know them in last view. It is milder than the turtle dove, and round the same there is a chain of love. Just in the middle of my heart there strikes a fatal dart, from whence fresh streams of blood did flow. Pray, did you meet my heart, or no? So nothing more at present from your ever sincere and affectionate lover. For love for ever occurring in this and in there, from whence it comes.
Our next writer went one stage further, asking for the recipient to name a day when they can call her his, which we are assuming is referring to her hand in marriage. This letter was written to Miss Lubbock and was found in a collection of papers from the Hammond family who lived in Norwich and Swaffham. We don't know the family's connection to Miss Lubbock. The writer says,
"Excuse the liberty I take, my feelings I can't smother. So much, my dear Miss L, I fear that you should wed another. You'll know my family is good, indeed we're quite genteel, so through in Cayley's shop I wait, why not my heart reveal? My aunt's sad matches I deplore, but why should I not rise? I always find, my dear, you wear the things that I advise. Your fairy form a throne would grace, your dress is quite perfection, and every time I hear it praised, I feel 'tis my selection. With your tournure and my address, our thousands we might make. There's not a nerve I would not strain for dear Miss Lubbock's sake. I think that you must be of age, though a mere girl you seem, Though plain my face, my courtly ways are worthy your esteem. Should your stern parent disapprove, O pray your courage muster, and every effort make, my dear, for going in a buster. If e'en the 29th I see you walk down London street, I then shall know beyond a doubt my wishes you will meet. O quickly name the happy day on which to call you mine, and may I endless bliss enjoy with thee, dear Valentine.
This letter was written by Staff Sergeant Frances Mary Elder, who was with the Women's Army Corps in the United States Army Air Force during the Second World War. Frances was assigned to the 1st Separate Battalion and served in England between 1943 and 1945, until she was transferred back to the United States, where she was promoted and served in the Air Intelligence Office at the Pentagon until discharge in November 1945. This letter, dated 24th of September 1944, details the wedding of Jean Young to Joe Majors.
24th of September 1944. Dearest family, I'm going to pull Mother's trick of making carbons. That way you would get all the news at one time. Not that there is much, but I attended a wedding yesterday, and I didn't want to write about it 3 different times, so thought I'd just write about it once. Jean Young married Joe Majors yesterday, and it was lovely. But to begin at the beginning, we arrived at the church en masse via truck, and our barracks was on the front row. The organist played in his best style, and then the processional began. Out came Joe and his best man and 2 ushers. The organist kept on playing, but no bride. Finally, after the processional had been played about 3 times, the minister came out and announced that the bride was a little late. I wish you could have seen Joe's face, it was so funny. Well, we sat for about 15 more minutes and waited. Finally, the bride arrived, and everything proceeded according to schedule. First came Peaches. She was adorable in pink, with the cutest hat you ever saw. Her flowers were shaking, so I was afraid she was going to drop them, but she made it okay. Then came Rima. She was in lavender and looked just as sweet as could be. Then Emmy came. She was in blue. All 3 of them had the most set smiles on their faces, just like they were afraid to breathe, which I guess they were. Finally, the bride arrived. She looked prettier than I'd ever seen her. Joe looked at her like, well, aren't you ashamed of yourself? Hal, his best man, told me later that the first thing Joe said to Jean when she finally got to the altar was, you know, I've been through this once before. The sun was shining during the whole ceremony, and the light from one of the windows was directly on the bridal couple. It was really a beautiful sight to see. The minister was old and grey-headed, just as sweet as could be, and he made the ceremony really mean something. His prayer at the end of the service was excellent. They took some grand pictures outside the church. Hope I get one to send home so you can see what the bridal couple looked like. They had the reception at the theatre in town. In case you don't know, the theatres, cinemas, over here have tea shops where you can get afternoon tea. Well, this particular one has a small separate room for just such as this, and this is where we were. Bill and I were invited, but Bill had to work, so I took care of Bunny, Bernard and Betty. Betty had a new dress for the occasion, and she was so proud of herself she could hardly sit still. We toasted the bride and groom with wine, and you know me, well, when they got through toasting, I was ready to go to bed because I will have to admit that I had a slight glow on. Anyway, we finally got away from there about 2 o'clock and came back to camp. I went to the office and the colonel took one look at me and I looked at him. Everybody was out of the office except he and Val, and I said, I don't think I'd be much good to you this afternoon. He said, I don't think so either, so I proceeded to go home and go to bed and sleep it off. Believe me, from now on when it comes to toasting anybody, I'm going to do some faking. It was fun though, and I certainly did sleep.
This love letter from Catherine Manser was addressed to Catherine Anguish and written in 1695. It was delivered via Alderman Godfrey and reads,
I have waited with all the patience I'm sure that is possible a lover can, and I'm sure my dearest must say I were unkind if I should have been all this time silent. when I took the next minute to let you know our journey was off, and also to lay out another, which is designed in hopes of meeting my dearest life, which should I be disappointed, I can't tell how to bear it. Therefore let there be some contrivance or another, or I am sure I shall come home very uneasy. I have not had you out of my thoughts all this week, neither sleeping nor waking. I beg of my dearest not to fail me, for I find I am not able to bear the want of my letters from my dearest. Though you be never so short, yet 'tis comfort to hear that is. Everlastingly, your most faithful lover, Kath Manser. August 1695.
A few years ago, a member of Norfolk Record Office staff bought a Lotus Flower Design Singer sewing machine from a local charity shop. The beautiful sewing machine held a surprise, as hidden in the base she discovered a folded letter. It seemed to be a love letter from an injured husband, Harry, to his wife, Jess, dated the 31st of July, 1946. Unfortunately, no surnames or locations are mentioned. Number 9 Ward, You Know Where, 31st of July, 1946. Dear Jess, many thanks for your letter, though I did not mention it when you were up Wednesday. I see you write that many thoughts have passed through your mind since I have been gone. Well, since I have been here, I have done the same thing, but possibly my thoughts have not run in exactly the same way. What changes in me you will find I don't know. Maybe the old husband you knew, or maybe a better one. Shall I say it has taken something more than our usual routine life to bring us closer together, and let us hope that it will remain so long as we live. Really speaking, the loss of one eye is not such a handicap as you might think, so please, when I come home, don't make me think I've only brought half a body home. You see, what I want to do is forget I ever lost it, though I don't suppose our scamp will let me for a little while. Still, I shan't mind, you know that. I know from your letter that you are really waiting for me to come home, and believe me, I am just waiting for that day. Well, love, perhaps I've written a lot and said nothing, but I know you will understand. Love from Harry. Obviously, not all relationships ended well. This divorce case from the late 1800s shows that there was an element of confusion as to whether the couple were allowed to marry other people or whether they were still married themselves. It reads:
Queen's Proctor's Department, Treasury, Whitehall, SW, 19th of November, 1895. Dear Sir, Durrant vs. Durrant. On Monday the 18th instant, the Queen's Proctor moved the court to rescind the decree nisi in this case. At the same time, however, he called the attention of the court to a letter he had received from the petitioner, in which she stated that she had been deserted by the respondent for 8 years, and that when she heard in 1890 that he was married again, she thought she was a free woman, and early in 1893 committed adultery with a man, which resulted in the birth of the child in August 1893. The letter went on to state that if the decree was not made absolute, she would be a ruined woman and thrown onto the streets. Mr. Justice Barnes, before whom the motion was heard, expressed an opinion that it was possibly a case in which the court might be able to exercise its discretion in favour of the petitioner, on the ground that the petitioner may have had the bona fide belief that the bigamy of her husband released her from her tie of marriage with him. He thereupon adjourned the motion. This morning the petitioner attended in person and stated on oath that when she heard her husband had committed bigamy, the Reverend Mr. Wortley, the vicar, told her that she was free, and that her father and mother, although they did not understand very much, also told her that they thought she was free. She made her additional and somewhat inconsistent statement that it was the Reverend Mr. Wortley who, after she found she was not a free woman, advised her to petition for a divorce. The judge said that he could not come to any decision in the case, and he was furnished with an affidavit of Mr. Wortley setting out exactly what he had told the woman, particularly, of course, whether or not he advised that she was no longer tied to the respondent after he had committed bigamy. Affidavits are also required from the father and mother of the petitioner as to what advice they gave her. The judge wishes these affidavits to be furnished as soon as possible. Please therefore at once proceed to West Rudham and let them be drawn with the utmost care, setting out very fully all the details of conversation, and fixing as accurately as possible the dates, or the approximate dates, when, and also the places where the conversation took place. If you can hear of anyone else who can throw any light upon the question, either in support of or by way of denial of the petitioner's story, let further affidavits be taken. It seems difficult to understand how Mr. Wortley could have advised the petitioner in the manner alleged, and it is quite possible that when he heard of the respondent's bigamy, he told the petitioner not that she was free, but that she ought to take steps to get free. However, you will ascertain from Mr. Wortley what really took place. Please make copies of all affidavits forwarded and serve the copies on the petitioner, who is now returning to West Rodham. Yours faithfully. P.S. I have ordered a transcript of the shorthand writer's notes of the evidence given by the petitioner today. I will send you a copy tomorrow, and I think it would be advisable to delay your journey to West Rodham until I have received it. It will be an advantage to have before you the exact words used by the petitioner. J. M. Baker, Esquire, Solicitor, Great Yarmouth.
Our next series of documents tell the story of Edward and Elizabeth Leaves, New Reading, leading up to and after their secret marriage of 1774. Here we listen to the couple arranging their wedding.
Strumpshaw, September 3rd, 1774. Number 60. Miss Reading, Woodstock, Oxon. My dearest Betsy, I most sincerely ask your pardon for my long silence, but we have not been at home for near this 3 weeks, till this last week, and I am ashamed to own that the making preparations for the shooting season has employed the whole of it. However, this I hope will arrive time enough to inform you that I will most certainly meet you on Wednesday the 15th instant at Henley at the house where the Oxford coach stops, or at Benson, if you can give me timely notice what house you will be at. I will take care to have every other necessary quite ready against Thursday morning. I have on thirds of a sermon to transcribe against tomorrow, so I hope you will excuse my deferring all other articles till I have the very great happiness of meeting my dearest beloved Betsy. Write to me at the White Horse, Ketter Lane. I hope I shall receive your letter on Tuesday next. However, I am determined to meet you at all events, so for God's sake do not disappoint me. I would have you fix the plans for your reception in London. Write to whatever friends you please. I shall say nothing of it to any person in this quarter. Adieu, my dear love, and believe me to remain with the greatest anxiety for the completion of our happiness. Your most truly sincere and constant lover, Edward Leaves. Strumpshaw, September 3rd, 1774. P.S. Let me know whether you will be at Henley or Benson, and what time.
After the marriage, it fell to Edward to let Elizabeth's parents know what they had done. He writes,
September 15th, 1774. The Reverend Mr. Reading, Woodstock, Oxon. Honoured and Reverend Sir, when I consider the uneasiness that this letter may occasion both to you and to Mrs. Reading, it gives me no small concern. On the other hand, when I reflect upon the distant prospect there was of my being made unhappy in the possession of your daughter, and also knowing how much her health and happiness, as well as my own, depended upon our union, I flatter myself that you will rather pity than condemn our proceedings. We were this day married at St. Andrew's, Holborn. As she is now my wife, you may depend upon it that I shall always do everything in my power to make her completely happy, and to render myself worthy of being called your dutiful son, Edward Leaves. Queen's Head, Holborn, September 15th, 1774. P.S. We intend to set out for Norfolk some time tomorrow, where, if you will be so obliging as to write to us, we shall esteem it as an addition to our happiness.
So how did Elizabeth's parents respond? Luckily, we have the letters to know their thoughts on the matter. And although the first letter states that her mother was very sorry and much concerned to hear of the steps she had taken, this later letter shows that, given time, her parents came to support her decision.
Mrs. Leaves, at the Reverend Mr. Nelson, Strumpshaw, near Norwich. Woodstock, September 23rd, 1774. My dear child, I was very sorry and much concerned to hear of the step you had taken. I think it might have been conducted with more propriety and your own happiness and your friend's satisfaction if you had waited till Mr. Leith had been in priest orders, but now I fear it will displease both your friends. I shall be very anxious to know what Mr. Leith's father says to your proceedings. I deferred writing till I had the pleasure of hearing from you out of Norfolk, which I have this night, Thursday, September 22nd, to my great joy to hear that you arrived in health and safety after so much fatigue, and that you were so kindly received by Mr. and Mrs. Nelson, to whom I am extremely obliged for their civilities and goodness to you, and also to Mr. Leiths for his kind and affectionate letter, and your own, which gives me great satisfaction. I heartily wish you both the enjoyment of many happy years in the state you are just entered, as do all your acquaintance here, who came to congratulate me on the occasion. The bells rung on Sunday. Your father received a very kind letter of congratulation from Mrs. Redwood. Mrs. Humphreys and Ms. desire their kind love and wish you very happy. She wrote to Mrs. Loveton on Saturday to tell her. Mr. H. informed us with your proceedings by sending a special messenger on Wednesday night, which frightened me so much I could not tell how to contain myself. I expected you had been dead, or some very bad accident had happened to you. I wish you had not taken the opportunity when you was with Mrs. H., as I think it was using her ill. I have not seen her. I was low and could not go. Your father did. I was very glad to hear you had wrote to her. Pray take care of yourself and be happy and easy, as I am now I hear you have met with such a kind reception, and know where you are to live till Mr. Leith is possessed of his living. I am very glad to hear Mr. Leith has written to his father. If he is not displeased, I shall be easy, and your father too, I hope. Don't you think it would be better to defer sending the drawers till the weather is better, and to send your portmanteau? I don't know whether you have packed up anything in it ready to be sent, and if you have not, whether I have the key or not to put anything in. I will get you some more shifts. Would you have any of these you have left sent? I am very sorry your things were detained, as it must distress you so, and make you in fear of their being lost. Some of Garfield's people had locked them up in their warehouse at Oxford. He says they are sent from the Black Bull in Bishopgate Street to Norwich. Your father gave him a direction, but he says a gentleman gave one to Jones's post coach, who took your trunk to London from Benson. I hope you'll receive it safe this week. I won't send your drawers nor portmanteau till I have the pleasure of hearing from you again. Your father joins me in the kindest remembrance to Mr. Leiths, Mr. and Mrs. Nelson, little Billy, and your dear self. Your ever affectionate mother, E. Reading. P.S. Charles has offered his service to live with you when you want.